In Western media, we tend to romanticize the kitchen. We imagine passionate chefs working as food artists to craft compelling and original dishes, serve the beauty of food on a plate. We have an entire food channel devoted to culinary escapades, while an animated movie about a rat chef, which would normally be considered a health violation, can pull on our heartstrings in its beautiful portrayal of food culture. We love food, and we love stories about food almost as much. No amount of Gordon Ramsay yelling, Iron Chef competitions, or Kitchen Nightmare episodes can fully dispel the fantasy of the food artist. We want, almost desperately, to believe in the purity of heart needed to make delicious cuisine, perhaps because we are ingesting it. Yet, we seldom step foot in the actual kitchens our food comes out of. When we see those hectic, high-stress conditions, we may be offended or disgusted. What looks so pretty on the plate in a well-furnished restaurant came from this strange place? For most, the veil between kitchen and dining table is best left untampered, but Overcooked, a franchise about kitchen life, lifts it in a uniquely game-like way. As someone who worked in a kitchen at what we will simply call the most expensive restaurant in town, because it was, I find that Overcooked lines up with my experiences more than you'd expect. Not necessarily in the specifics, we didn't contend with constant fires, earthquakes, or cook in a hot air balloon, but in its general vibe, in needing to be constantly doing something, the rough structure of how things need to be done, and the supreme importance of communication to run a smooth kitchen. The game's aesthetic is that of a professional kitchen, but as importantly, its design evokes what it's like to work in one, and I find that incredibly interesting. It's what this video is about. The first thing to understand about Overcooked is that you're not the head chef in this fantasy. You are a line cook. The line cook is the person who actually prepares your meal at a restaurant. They like to have a clean station and do well to follow the head chef's recipes. In Anthony Bourdain's book, Kitchen Confidential, he describes line cooking, when done well, as a beautiful thing to watch. It's a high-speed collaboration resembling, at its best, ballet or modern dance. It is this dance that the Overcooked player engages in. They do not haphazardly choose to put arugula on a burger, they simply prepare, cook, and plate a recipe provided to them. Whether it's at a fancy restaurant or a McDonald's, line cooks get the job done. They're not food artists, they are assembly workers. But how does Overcooked make line cooking fun? Even Bourdain admits that the profession is about consistency, about mindless, unvarying repetition, the same series of tasks performed over and over and over again in exactly the same way. Most obviously is in how the game removes some of the crummy things about line cooking. It is hot as hell in the kitchen, especially when standing in front of a stove. It's also messy and a little dangerous. You're bound to get burned once in a while. Also, it's a stressful job with real consequences for failure, and one you're likely devoting 5 to 7 nights of your week to. The Overcooked player only has to play when they want to, and the lack of tangible consequences makes an out-of-control fire funny rather than disastrous. The game sidesteps the unpleasantness of the kitchen while retaining its spirit. Overcooked primarily breaks up the monotony of the kitchen through its level design. Each map comes with its own obstacles. Even if the recipes remain the same, the player can't cook them in the same way. They've got to adapt. The location of stoves, cutting boards, sinks, and most preciously, counter space all affect how the player goes about serving some sushi. But as they progress through the game, these levels become diabolically constructed. Suddenly, you're cooking fried fish on a river barge or burritos in space. These kitchens are purposefully unintelligently designed. They shift around on you, make you curse, and require multiple attempts to learn and master. You might think this is not at all like a real kitchen, but the kitchen is also a place of constant change. What ingredients you have on hand, who came into work today, what the customer ordered, what they sent back. Oh damn, did the dishwasher just stop working? Oh, you thought I meant the machine? No, the person, he just walked out the door. In the kitchen, I was always adapting to changing circumstances. Every day, there was something new to contend with. Perhaps it was in part because I was a lowly dishwasher that I was expendable, so I was called up to help cook all manner of dishes, prepare soups, chop vegetables, cook flatbreads. I would never be able to tell you what a day of work in a kitchen would look like before I showed up. and Overcooked carries that same energy in its wildly fluctuating level design. While Bourdain describes the line cook's job as monotonous, and he's right, the actions themselves are monotonous, just like how the same button in Overcooked is used to cook any meat or pick up an ingredient. But the context of that monotony is never quite the same, and the game displays that beautifully. The structure of play in Overcooked also mirrors a professional kitchen. Most of a line cook's time isn't spent actually cooking meals on the stove or in the oven, but preparing items that are going to be cooked later. This can be marinating the meats, chopping ingredients, making soups, organizing the walk-in freezer, or a whole host of other things. To make great food, you've got to have everything on hand to make it. In Overcooked, the player spends a lot of their time not cooking food, but doing everything else: washing dishes, cutting ingredients, moving from point A to point B, plating the food, sending it out. Unlike many other cooking games where the focus is just on the act of cooking and a little prep, by placing avatars in the kitchen and forcing them to move around to accomplish goals, sometimes even on conveyor belts, the structure of prepare, cook, plate, dishes of the professional kitchen remains intact for every meal the player serves their patrons. It's true to form that the actual cooking is the easiest part of Overcooked. The kitchen is also a place for weirdos. Bourdain writes, "If the chef is anything like me, the cooks are a dysfunctional, mercenary lot, fringe dwellers motivated by money, the peculiar lifestyle of cooking, and a grim pride." Similarly, the cast of characters to play as in Overcooked are a motley crew. They are goofy looking, comprise a wide variety of races, both fictional and non, and don't seem like they belong together. Particularly compared to the patrons of these restaurants who are all human, the chefs stand out as being other, different, on the fringes of this fictional society. My go-to is the raccoon in a wheelchair. 2 big thumbs up for including a differently abled character in the game Ghost Town. The inclusion of these characters, with their presumably different personalities and ways of life, reaches to the heart of most kitchens as a place of diversity, and the ensuing chaos that follows from it. I don't want to rag on my coworkers too much because I love them, but they sometimes made my life difficult. I got 1 day of training from the dishwasher who had my job before me, then he quit. Within days, I was training the next gal up. As you can guess, my position had a high turnover rate. Much worse was the day washer, who had been there for years. I only met him once or twice, but somehow he was the biggest thorn in my side. On days he didn't come to work, I had to do all the dishes from lunch and dinner, twice the work for no extra pay. And he missed a lot of work, always with an excuse. One particularly egregious time, he called in sick on Monday, claiming to be in the hospital after getting hit by a car. The next day, he was at work and, according to the chefs who saw him, had nothing wrong with him at all. He was a noted storyteller, and separating fact from fiction was hard enough for people who dealt with him firsthand. I'm sure every kitchen has similar stories, but dealing with the disparate personalities of the kitchen made me more resilient to the challenges it offered. While each worker in a kitchen contributes to it in their own way, it is ultimately just the nature of the kitchen to be chaotic. It's an unpredictable environment where working harder and faster is usually the only solution to burgeoning problems. Again, Bourdain's wisdom reigns true. A good line cook has to be able to remain clear-headed, organized, and reasonably even-keeled during hectic and stressful service periods. Similarly, the kitchens of Overcooked are crowded with new problems. For the duration of each level, players are just trying to put out fires, both figuratively and literally. Nothing goes according to plan, so adaptation is more important than memorization. There is great stress in trying to get out every order on time. It's how the players handle that pressure that reveals something about them. In order to adapt to these ever-shifting scenarios, both the line cook and the Overcooked player need one skill above all else: communication. They need to be able to ask others in confidence to do tasks for them, and to be receptive to listening to them when they have requests. They need to have their ears open while chopping meat, to bark orders while doing dishes. Trying to play the game on mute with everyone's mouth closed not only removes most of the fun of Overcooked, which is first and foremost a social game, but also makes conquering its challenges exceptionally difficult. We love to wax on about the fast chopping skills of great chefs, their ability to adjust recipes on the fly when things go wrong, to arrange dishes beautifully, or to bring to life creative flavor palettes on the plate. Just as important as the chef's hands, eyes, nose, and tongue are their ears and mouth. In fact, it kind of bugs me that most cooking competitions are single chefs battling against each other because it takes a kitchen to make a meal. In my time working in the kitchen, it was always loud, not just from the sounds of clanging pots and pans, knives hitting cutting boards, or the sizzling of cooking food, but the booming voices of chefs and waiters making their needs known to everyone around them. No time to ask politely, just enough words to make sure it gets done. I'd hate to work in a kitchen where this wasn't the case. I crave the camaraderie of those days, working as a unit, a well-oiled machine, knowing that our work mattered not just because someone got to eat their fill, but because we did it together. Each member of the team filling their role, and, if you've been paying attention, some other ones as well. If you're still unsure about the connection between Overcooked and professional kitchens, consider this quote from the essay that propelled Bourdain to fame. "Being a chef is a lot like being an air traffic controller. You are constantly dealing with the threat of disaster." Isn't that the exact feeling Overcooked evokes? The threat of disaster always looms, waiting to strike your kitchen if you're not careful. It's precarious, it's tricky, but in the end, in both the real world and in the game, once that plate hits the table, it's the lack of evidence of this struggle that makes it all worth it. Remember, a chef doesn't get to eat the food they make, so the beauty of its taste and smell are ultimately lost in them. In the end, it's only if you can pride yourself on the work, not flavor, that maintains one's pride. Returning to our image of the professional chef, what I love about Gordon Ramsay, Anthony Bourdain, and Remy is that they feel flawed and imperfect. It is in these flaws that they can remain dreamers and idealists, even when the kitchen is a place of weirdos and chaos. It is this imperfection that Overcooked manages to capture. No level ever feels perfectly executed, and for most players, no plan is fully followed through. You have to improvise, adapt, make do with what you have. That's the beauty of cooking in the kitchen, and it's the beauty of Overcooked, too. I am Error, off to cook some vindaloo.